Have you ever woken up from a dream feeling like it was more than just a dream? As if something or someone was trying to tell you something? You open your eyes, your heart still pounding, an image or a message lingering in your mind. Was it just a random sequence of thoughts? Or was it a sign, a whisper from the divine? Dreams have always been mysterious, but what if I told you they might be one of the clearest ways God communicates with us? What if right now you've already received a message but just haven't recognized it? Today we're diving into the hidden language of dreams, the way God uses them to guide, warn, and comfort us. By the end of this video, you may discover that a dream you once dismissed was actually a divine revelation waiting to be understood. In an endless desert, the golden sands stretch as far as the eye can see, and the horizon shimmers under the heat of the midday sun. There is no one around, no voices, no movement, only the wind swirling around you, whispering words you can't quite understand. Then a feeling washes over you, not fear, not confusion, but something else, a certainty. You're not alone. This is how God speaks, not always in thunder or lightning, not in booming voices from the sky. Sometimes his voice is a whisper, a quiet presence in the depths of your heart. And more often than not, he speaks through dreams. Throughout history, God has communicated with his people in their sleep. He warned Pharaoh of a coming famine through Joseph's dream interpretation. He spoke to Daniel about kingdoms yet to rise. He even guided the wise men away from danger through a dream. And yet, we often overlook our own dreams, dismissing them as nonsense or simply the mind wandering. But what if we're missing something? Have you ever had a dream that stuck with you long after you woke up? Maybe it was a phrase that kept repeating, an image that refused to fade, or a feeling you just couldn't shake. That's no accident. God doesn't waste words, and he doesn't waste dreams. In the book of Job 33:14-16 it says, "For God speaks in one way and in two, though man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, while they slumber on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and terrifies them with warnings." God speaks in ways we often fail to perceive. But why dreams? Because in our waking lives, we are distracted, our thoughts tangled in worries, plans, and endless noise. But when we sleep, our defenses are down, our minds are open. And in that stillness, God whispers, "Tonight, as you close your eyes, pay attention. What if he's already speaking to you?" A woman once had a dream. In it, she was walking through a dense forest, the trees towering above her, their shadows stretching endlessly. She wasn't lost, but she didn't know exactly where she was going. She kept walking, her feet crunching over dry leaves, until she came upon a single word carved into the bark of a tree: trust. She stopped staring at it. Then the dream faded. The next morning she brushed it off. Just a dream, she thought. But then it happened again. Same forest, same trees, same word, trust. And then a third time. But this time she didn't wake up confused. This time she woke up with a strange sense of peace. 2 days later, she was laid off from her job. Fear threatened to consume her. But then she remembered. Trust. It was a message she didn't understand at the time, but one she needed to hold on to. And sure enough, within weeks a new door opened, one she could have never predicted. How many times has God tried to tell us something, only for us to ignore it? A repeating dream, a persistent image, a word or phrase that won't leave our minds. God speaks to us in patterns, knowing that we often need to hear something more than once before we finally listen. In Matthew 18:16, it says, "By the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, every matter shall be established." God knows that repetition grabs our attention. That's why when he has something important to say, he may send the same message more than once. But what happens when we don't listen? Sometimes we keep running into the same problems in life, not because we're unlucky, but because we keep ignoring the signs God is giving us. Think about it. Have you ever noticed a situation repeating itself in your life? Maybe the same kind of relationship issues, the same financial struggles, the same sense of restlessness, no matter what you do. Maybe it's not life being unfair. Maybe it's God saying, pay attention. When something keeps showing up, whether in dreams, in conversations, in random encounters, it's not a coincidence. It's a divine message waiting to be understood. Tonight, before you go to sleep, take a moment. Pray. Ask God to reveal what He wants you to know. And when you wake up, don't just move on. Write it down. Reflect. Because the more you pay attention, the more clearly you will hear Him. Could it be that God has been speaking to you all along? And if so, will you finally listen? Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a storm. The wind howls, the rain lashes against your skin. Thunder roars above you, shaking the very ground beneath your feet. Everything around you is chaos, and yet, despite it all, you feel calm. You don't understand why. By all logic, you should be afraid. But there, in the center of the storm, there is peace. This is how God works. Have you ever had a dream where you were in a terrifying situation, yet somehow you weren't afraid? Or perhaps you were going through one of the hardest times in your life, but after waking from a certain dream, you felt an unexplainable sense of peace. That's not a coincidence. That's God speaking to you. Philippians 4:7 says, "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." God's peace doesn't always make sense. It's not tied to circumstances. It doesn't depend on whether life is going well. It's a peace that exists even in the middle of chaos. There's a story of a man who was drowning in financial debt. Every day, anxiety crushed him. He had no solutions, no way out. He prayed desperately, asking God for a sign. But the only thing he received was a dream. In the dream, he was in a tiny boat in the middle of the ocean. The waves were massive, crashing around him, and yet he sat there, completely still. Above him, the sky was dark, the wind howling, but inside, he felt nothing but peace. When he woke up, the weight of his anxiety was gone. Nothing in his situation had changed, and yet he was no longer afraid. He had no idea how, but he knew, deep in his heart, that everything was going to be okay. A week later, an unexpected opportunity arose, completely changing his financial situation. God had already given him peace before He gave him the answer. Sometimes God doesn't remove the storm. Instead, He gives us peace in the middle of it. Have you ever woken up from a dream feeling a strange, unexplainable peace? A sense of calm that didn't match your circumstances? That is God's way of telling you, I am here. Trust me. Have you ever had a dream that later came true? Maybe it was a conversation, a place, or an event that seemed insignificant at the time. But then, days, weeks, or even years later, it happened exactly as you saw it. That's not just déjà vu. That's God giving you a glimpse into something before it happens. In Genesis, Joseph, the son of Jacob, had a dream. In it, he saw himself standing while his brothers' sheaves of grain bowed before his. When he told them, they mocked him. How could their little brother ever be greater than them? Years passed. Joseph was betrayed, sold into slavery, and imprisoned. His life seemed to be falling apart. But then, one day, everything changed. The very dream that had once seemed impossible became reality. Joseph became a ruler in Egypt, and his brothers, now in need of food, came and bowed before him, just as he had dreamed. God had shown him the future before it happened. And He still does the same today. There's a story of a woman who had a dream about standing in a place she had never seen before. She didn't recognize the streets, the buildings, or the people, but she remembered the feeling, the overwhelming sense that something important was about to happen. Years later, she moved to a new city for a job. One day, as she was walking to work, she stopped in her tracks. The buildings, the streets, the people. It was the exact same scene from her dream. At that moment she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. God is outside of time. He sees what we cannot, and sometimes he chooses to show us glimpses of what's to come, not to scare us, but to prepare us. Have you ever experienced this? A moment when something happened and you realized you had already seen it in a dream. God is always speaking. The question is, are you paying attention? Imagine walking down a long corridor lined with doors. Each door represents a choice, an opportunity, a path you're considering taking. You reach out to open one, but the handle won't turn. You try another, locked. You push against another, sealed shut. Frustration builds. Why are none of these doors opening? You knock, you wait, still nothing. And then, just as you're about to give up, you notice a door at the very end of the hall. It wasn't part of your plan. It wasn't even one you had considered before. But as you step toward it, it swings open effortlessly. This is how God moves in our lives. Not every locked door is rejection. Sometimes it's protection. Have you ever had a dream where you tried to enter a place but couldn't? Maybe you were walking toward a house, a building, or even a road, but something, an invisible force, a closed gate, a missing key, prevented you from going in. And then, days or weeks later, an opportunity you desperately wanted slipped through your fingers. A job you thought was perfect didn't work out. A relationship ended unexpectedly. A plan you had carefully built fell apart. In the moment, it felt like failure. But later, sometimes much later, you saw the truth. That closed door was God protecting you from something you couldn't see. Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight." A man once had a dream where he stood before a massive wooden door. He pushed, knocked, even pounded with all his strength, but it wouldn't budge. He felt desperate, confused. Then suddenly a voice spoke, "This is not the door I have for you." When he woke up, the meaning wasn't clear. But weeks later, after being rejected from what he thought was his dream job, he remembered. At the time, he was devastated. But a few months later, a different, unexpected opportunity arose. One that led him to a career beyond what he had imagined. Had the first door opened, he would have never found the right one. So, what about you? Have you ever felt the sting of a closed door, only to realize later that it was actually a blessing? Maybe a dream was already warning you. Maybe God had already given you a sign. The next time a door closes in your life, don't fight it. Instead, ask, "God, what are you protecting me from? What greater path do you have for me?" Because sometimes the closed door is the very thing leading you to the one that was meant for you all along. Have you ever had a dream where someone appeared and told you something important? Maybe it was a stranger. Maybe it was someone you knew. Maybe it was even someone who had passed away. And when you woke up, their words stayed with you, echoing in your mind, as if they carried a deeper meaning. What if they did? Throughout the Bible, God has used people, both in dreams and in real life, to deliver messages. Think of Samuel. As a child, he heard his name being called in the night. 3 times he woke up thinking it was Eli, the priest. But finally, Eli realized the truth. It wasn't a human voice calling him. It was God. "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening," Samuel finally answered. And from that moment, his life was forever changed. Could God be using people in your dreams to speak to you? A woman once had a recurring dream of an elderly man telling her, "It's time to move on." At first, she dismissed it, but the dream came again and again, each time the same man, the same words. She didn't understand. Move on from what? Then one day, a situation in her life became clear. She had been holding on to something that was no longer meant for her, a relationship that was keeping her stuck, a job that drained her soul. And in that moment, she realized the messenger in her dream had been guiding her toward a decision she had been too afraid to make. Maybe you've experienced something similar, a person in a dream offering advice, giving a warning, or speaking words that resonated deeply with you. Sometimes it's someone we recognize, other times it's a figure we've never seen before, but the message remains. God places people in our lives for a reason, sometimes in reality, sometimes in our dreams. If you wake up remembering a conversation, a name or a warning, don't ignore it. Pray about it. Ask God to reveal what He's trying to tell you, because the people in your dreams may not just be characters in a story, they may be messengers, and their words could be the answer you've been searching for all along. Seemingly out of nowhere, a melody repeating itself, a lyric that won't leave your head. Maybe it was a song you hadn't heard in years, or maybe it was one you didn't even know existed. At first, it seems random, but what if it isn't? What if God is speaking to you through music? Psalm 43 says, "He has put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord." Songs are more than just sounds. They are vessels of emotion, of memory, of divine messages that go straight to the heart. A man once prayed for a sign. He was in a season of uncertainty, unsure of which direction to take. One night he had a dream. In it, he was sitting alone in a vast empty room, and a single song played in the background. "Be still and know that I am God." When he woke up, he felt an overwhelming peace. The next day, he heard the same song on the radio, and later that week, he walked into a church, and the worship team was singing it. That was no coincidence. That was confirmation. Sometimes when we are searching for answers, God sends them in the form of music. Maybe you've had a dream where a song played clearly. Maybe the lyrics stuck with you even after you woke up. Or maybe, out of nowhere, a melody kept repeating itself in your mind at the exact moment you needed encouragement. Pay attention. The song may carry a message. Think about how music is used in the Bible. Paul and Silas sang in prison and their chains broke. David played the harp and King Saul's torment left him. Worship and music have always had power. Power to heal, power to comfort, and power to reveal truth. If a song comes to you in a dream, listen closely. Write it down. Look up the lyrics. Ask yourself, what is God trying to tell me through this melody? Because sometimes the answer you've been searching for isn't in words, it's in a song. Maybe you're watching this because you've had a dream that you can't forget. Maybe it left you wondering if God is trying to tell you something. Here's the truth. He is. Dreams are one of the many ways He reaches out to us, not just to speak, but to draw us closer to Him. The question is, are you listening? Tonight, as you lay your head down, pray. Ask God to reveal what He wants you to see, to guide you through your dreams. And when you wake up, take a moment to reflect. Write it down. Pray over it. Because the more you listen, the more clearly you will hear Him. If you've ever had a dream that felt like a message, share it in the comments. Your story might be the confirmation someone else needs. And if this message has spoken to you, like this video, subscribe, and join us as we continue exploring the many ways God speaks into our lives. God is always speaking. The question is, are we paying attention?